So let's get on with today's show. It's got some astonishing secrets. Like, for example, did you know that Enoch and Christopher and Robert have proved this was actually in southern France when the Book of Enoch was written? Ireland when the Book of Enoch was written? Wow, this is really something. Let me tell you what they've done is they've reconstructed the mystery, the secrets that the Templars found beneath the ruins of the temple in Jerusalem so many hundreds of years ago, those secrets that have been hidden by the Catholic Church just virtually forever, ever since. Now, Christopher and Robert, using their skill as scholars and research into Freemasonry, have actually reconstructed this. They're going to tell us what those secrets are. Well, get ready for it. I am pumped. UnknownCountry.com offers so much that's free. This program is always free. We have free daily news of the Edge, unlike anything you'll ever see anywhere, plus a wonderful free newsletter. All you have to do to sign up is to give us your email address right on the site, and we will never give that email address to anybody else. All it will do is get you the newsletter. It will not get you 1 ounce of spam, believe you me. So sign up today, the UnknownCountry.com newsletter. Well, I am very excited to introduce to you once again Christopher Knight. He's been with us before. The Book of Hiram. Christopher and Robert Lomas have written a new book, Freemasonry, Venus, and the Secret Key to the Life of Jesus. Of course, who could forget the extraordinary books that they have given us before? Huge bestsellers all, The Hiram Key, The Second Messiah, Uriel's Machine. Arguably some of the most important books ever written about Freemasonry and about the Masons. And there's an awful lot of stuff out there about the Masons that is essentially and profoundly nonsensical. I hate to say it. Now, there are those of us who love to believe that the Masons are a dangerous conspiratorial organization that's kind of behind all sorts of dreadful things happening in the world. But Christopher and Robert take a completely different view, and we're going to find out exactly what that is during the course of this interview. And I think you're going to be fascinated with find some real surprises about what Masonry really is and where it came from. Christopher comes to this from an odd direction. He's got his degree in advertising and marketing design. He's the chairman of a marketing and advertising company who has gone on a remarkable journey, Christopher. What a trip you guys have been on, searching through seeking for the hidden meaning of Freemasonry.
We had no idea what we were getting ourselves into at all. It was innocent curiosity to start with, but the train just doesn't stop. It just keeps on going.
Now, what was the moment that started it? That always fascinates me, because people on these amazing journeys that we talk to on Dreamland are often very much like you, who just suddenly started doing something that they never expected to do at all.
Yeah, they take on a life of their own, really. In truth, it started right at the very beginning, because I joined Freemasonry because I wanted to know what they got up to behind these closed doors and blacked out windows. And after a year or two, I realized that they didn't really know, and I spent several years sort of reading what I could. And then in due course, I decided, when I met Robert, who was very much in the same boat, and we decided, let's really get down to this and see what we can find out. And we thought we'd spend a few months sort of digging around, and we might get back a few hundred years. And it's now 13, 14 years on, and we've gone back thousands of years, and there's no sign of it stopping. So, I mean, it's like stepping on an express train when you think you were just sauntering along.
Now, you made a huge statement back there a few seconds ago saying that they themselves, the Masons, did not know what they were doing.
Certainly, everyone I came across, at first they pretend they do. What's this all about? You'd ask, and they'd say, well, don't worry, young man, you'll find out in due course. And then you realize they haven't a clue, and that's just a way of saving face, if you like. And when you speak to more and more senior Freemasons around the world, eventually they have admitted, well, we don't know. There are some in London that pretend they know, but they will only pretend that they know to the year 1717, and then there's a solid wall comes up because they're not allowed to sort of think much before that date. But
now, why that particular date?
Because that was the time that the Grand Lodge of England was set up in London, which was a time of war with Jacobites in Scotland, and Freemasonry was entirely enmeshed with the Jacobite movement, and the family that had provided the kings of Scotland and then the kings of England, who were no longer wanted. So there was a state of war between England and Scotland, and to say you were a Freemason was tantamount to saying you were a traitor. You know, you might as well say I'm Al-Qaeda. You try and forget your association. We don't know where we've come from. You know, we've got nothing to do with those terrible terrorists called Jacobites. So, you know, there was a sort of instant amnesia. It was the only way of saving the organization because people were just running away from it because being associated with it was very bad news socially and probably, you know, could get you hung. So it was an intelligent bit of amnesia that happened in 1717 that's not entirely gone away.
Well, not at all. On the contrary. Now, it started at that particular moment in the Masonic history. It was, as I believe you point out in the book, it started with Christopher Wren.
Christopher Wren was, according to the records published by the Grand Lodge until 1914, was Grand Master before that date. But then they tied it up and realized they shouldn't be referring to anybody being Grand Master before that date because they're not supposed to know anything before that date. So there was a final bit of tidying up. But Christopher Wren himself was walking away from the organization because he didn't want bad publicity. He was a leading figure. And obviously he'd rebuilt London after the Great Fire of 1666. And he didn't want to be associated with it. So there must have been quite a lot of people. It came down to just a small group of men that got together on Midsummer's Day in 1717 and said, look, we've got to sort this out. Either we're going to disappear or we're going to reinvent ourselves, and that's what they did. And the same week, they also reinvented the Modern Order of Druids, which came out of the same pub the same week in London.
I didn't even know about the Modern Order of Druids. Do tell us what this is.
Well, I don't claim to know a great deal about them, but they are an organization that has claimed to have knowledge of the ways of the Druids, the people associated with the Celts, the priests associated with the Celts that ran through to the Roman period in the British Isles, that disappeared and suddenly reappeared the same week in 1717 in the same pub in London from the same group of people. So
now that's
you can
very
start to see where their mindset was.
That's very significant, though, because it suggests that they were preserving part of the hidden knowledge, of the secret knowledge, in another group of another name entirely.
I think they were. That's exactly right. I mean, we haven't sort of gone down that line too much, but that's very much what it suggests. You can make your own conclusions, but it looks like they believed they'd got secret knowledge, some of which was too perhaps esoteric and had to be parked up somewhere different. They were sort of separating it. It would seem. But they didn't explain themselves in writing, so we can't be sure. But that's certainly what it looks like.
Now let's go back to the Scottish connection, which is, of course, of paramount importance. And before the break, the question is, in my mind, is trace a little bit of the history of the actual history of the Masons. And let me also ask you, perhaps I'd better make this two questions. I've got so many questions for you, I can't. They're all coming out at once. Does the Scottish Rite as it exists today still acknowledge its ancient past, or is it more like English Masonry?
Well, it's very much like American Masonry, driving the Scottish Rite. It was sort of reborn over there and reintroduced back over here. There is little direct continuity in it other than that which is contained in the rituals, and they've been changed dramatically over the years. So we always try and seek out, Robert and myself always seek out the oldest rituals we can get our hands on. because people always seem to think they can improve things, but they really don't understand what they're playing with, and they tend to throw the baby out with the bathwater sometimes.
Right. They become ritual bound, and I think that we can see if we look at the history of ritual in ancient Egypt, we can see the religion evolving and changing and becoming more and more ritual bound, or even the history of the Catholic Church in our own lifetimes. The
Sure.
Mass has become so ritualized that it's almost meaningless. We'll be right back. This is Whitley Strieber. It's Dreamland. We'll be right back. The veil between the worlds can fall. The undiscovered country can become your backyard. There is a much larger world behind your backs. It is this world to which man is blind. Man is soul blind and God blind. There is no supernatural. There is only the natural world, and you have access to all of it. Souls are part of nature. These are just a few of the things said to me at 3 o'clock in the morning of June the 6th, 1998, when I was awakened by the master of the key. Get the key. Bring it into your life today. The key, available only in this world from the unknowncountry.com store. Remember, subscribers get it for just $9.47, half the list price. Regular price, $14.95 discounted. This is Whitley Strieber. It's Dreamland. I'm talking with Christopher Knight about the Book of Hiram, Freemasonry, Venus, and the Secret Key to the Life of Jesus. And we're really just sort of probing around right now and beginning to explore where Masonry came from. And I want to ask you, you say frankly in the book that Masonry in modern times is dying.
Yeah.
And that's certainly my observation. Wherever you go, you see Masonic lodges abandoned or nearly abandoned, and it's basically, as you put in the book, an old man's dining club.
Yeah, I'm afraid so. They used to be the driving force of every community just a couple of generations ago, but life has changed. With the fast-moving age, and everyone has got plenty of things to do without joining an organization that doesn't tell you what it's about until you join. It's not the modern way. And unfortunately...
And doesn't actually know what it's about either.
Yes, that's true. What it does tell you about itself is very superficial. So it doesn't really understand itself. So, why should I join is the question that a lot of young men are asking themselves. Because the old idea that it gives you preferment in business or is going to be good for your career just isn't true. I don't know if it ever was, but I've never seen anything like that. So there's not even a bad motive to join. So unfortunately, the average age, I think, is getting older and older, and numbers are dwindling worldwide.
And dwindling, and it's because, isn't it, that in the end, the rituals are just meaningless rituals. You don't get to know the great secret, or do you?
Well, you don't, because according to Freemasonry, the great secret was lost, and a substituted secret was used to replace it until such time as the original secret should be refound. Now, we think we have refound that old secret, and in many respects, Freemasonry has served its usefulness in that it has maintained very, very, very ancient traditions. But the important thing is to learn from Freemasonry before it does disappear. I mean, I hope it doesn't disappear, because it is a very worthwhile organization. But should it die, as we worry it might, it's important that the information that's contained in those rituals is saved before it happens.
Now, because you're saying that there still is information contained in modern huge amounts, but they just don't know what it is.
That's right.
They're kind of carrying it out by rote without knowing what they're doing.
Yeah, so it's sort of like encoded information. And it's all jumbled up chronologically and otherwise. So it's a matter of sifting it apart, and there is a real story there. I mean, much of it is very similar to the information in the Bible, but there's a lot of extra information as well. And when you look at contemporary documents, and by that I mean Old Testament and New Testament times, and bring them alongside, you can start to get illumination on what it's about and what it's trying to record.
That's fascinating because, of course, it's actually trying to record something enormous and of tremendous importance to the understanding of ultimately what mankind even is.
Absolutely, it is at that level, yes.
I mean, this is as I read the book, I realized what you were trying to communicate here was arguably the most important information in the world is contained in this.
That sounds very grandiose, but the fact.
Well, I can say it, even if you don't want to say it, but if we understood what mankind actually was and who we were and where we came from, we would be arguably a larger being than we are now as a species, and that's terribly important.
Absolutely, it is, and we certainly believe it's there, and the facts speak for themselves. The information that is there is can be correlated against other people's work, and it certainly looks like it is really getting to the root of what mankind has always believed. And I think we were more spiritually alive in the distant past, and a lot smarter than people realize. And they knew things that we've forgotten, and it's time to remember them.
I think it's very definitely time to remember them, because as we lose touch with the rituals, not only with their meaning, but even with the idea of doing them, it looks to me like within a generation there will be maybe very few people who are aware of Masonic lore and ritual and its significance at all.
That's the fear, yeah.
Yeah, and in a sense, we will become less human because of that.
Absolutely, but the important point is that this is real science that's underlying all this. It's not. A lot of religions have become, dare I say it, from my point of view, engulfed in the myth and the storytelling. The essence can be buried in all that, and that to some extent has happened in Freemasonry. But the real message and the real science that is important to humans is there to be seen. It's not just wise words. It is much, much more than that. It is a real physical way of making mankind sharper and better, and making societies sharper and better.
Now, I want to go back to a little bit of prehistory now and begin to really delve into this, because I'm not like most of the interviewers you'll talk to who didn't read your book. I read it in great detail, as you probably
I'm very
know.
pleased about that. Thank you.
Right, having been interviewed by me before. I want to talk first. We'll get to New Grange, but I think I want to talk about New Grange first.
Okay.
Tell us what New Grange is, and then we're going to get into Enoch. So tell us about New Grange first.
Well, New Grange, surprisingly, isn't a very well-known place, considering its huge importance. It's a building, use that word, in Southern Ireland, in Eire, in the Boyne Valley, that was built over 5,000 years ago. It's huge. It's more massive than the Great Pyramid of Khufu. It has a huge white curved wall facing the rising sun, and an entrance, and above it a light box that allows light into it. And it was so carefully designed, something like 3,300 BC, that the light of the winter solstice sun, as it rises, shines down a collimated tunnel and hits a sort of triple chamber in the center of this huge construction. But that's not its purpose. Its purpose, we believe, was to allow the light of Venus, which every 8 years at the winter solstice rose in the east about 20 minutes before the sun. And the light of Venus, which is very, very bright, the third brightest object in the sky after the moon and the sun, shone down that column into this large building, which is the most dramatic thing you can imagine. It looks like a cathedral or something.
Well, we're going to have to take a brief break, and we will find out more about this in just a moment. This is Whitley Strieber. It's Dreamland. We'll be right back. UnknownCountry.com offers so much that's free. This program is always free. We have free daily news of the Edge, unlike anything you'll ever see anywhere, plus a wonderful free newsletter. All you have to do to sign up is to give us your email address right on the site, and we will never give that email address to anybody else. All it will do is get you the newsletter. It will not get you 1 ounce of spam, believe you me. So sign up today, the UnknownCountry.com newsletter. The Book of Hiram, The Secrets of the Knights Templar Revealed, a remarkable achievement by Robert Lomas and Chris Knight. Extraordinary, and at an extraordinary price at the UnknownCountry.com store, just $18.95. A price like that cannot last forever. So go to the UnknownCountry.com store, get the Book of Hiram, a beautiful hardcover book listed at $27.50 for just $18.95. The Secrets of the Knights Templar. How can you go wrong? Check Amazon, see what their price is. You'll come back. The UnknownCountry.com store. This is Whitley Strieber. It's Dreamland. We're back talking to Christopher Knight about the Book of Hiram, Freemasonry, Venus, and the secret key to the life of Jesus, which we will explore thoroughly over the course of this interview. But we're getting to it in a kind of an interesting way. Before we left the air, we were talking about New Grange. Christopher had just described this 5,000-year-old, enormous 5,000-year-old structure to us in Southern Ireland. We're beginning to talk about its importance and its relationship to Venus. So go ahead, Christopher, and let's pick up the thread.
Right. We must remember that this is about 1,000 years older than the pyramids of Egypt. So just to get a handle on how old we're talking about here. Now, over the entrance, there are 5 symbols which are a rectangle with a cross through it. That represents a year. That's the marks of the rising and setting sun. And it has 8 of those, which tells us that whatever they were looking at happened once every 8 years, which is the shortest of the Venus cycles. So once every 8 years, Venus shines in there. Now, we can't prove this, but there are various reasons why we believe that was connected to resurrection inside there, that they would take the remains of a deceased person and pregnant women, because they all gave birth at that time of year. They all became pregnant at the spring equinox, and they all gave birth at Christmas, as we would know it, the winter solstice. And I think they believed that the spirit of the deceased would enter the newborn child if the light of Venus was coming into that window. So they no doubt induced birth there. Now that's a belief that we can see continuing through the Canaanites into the Jews, and certainly the third degree of Freemasonry. The candidate is killed symbolically, of course, and then resurrected from their grave to the light of Venus rising in the east. So we believe there's a direct connection between this 5,300-year-old building in Ireland and the ritual still conducted, the most important of the rituals, still conducted by Freemasons today. And we can see its usage in between through various cultures.
Yeah, now, the thing that's so interesting about what you just said is you touched on a relationship between Jewish belief and something that happened at New Grange in Southern Ireland 5,000 years ago.
Yeah.
And yet, so tell us now a little bit about where that connection comes from. I think it's absolutely fascinating.
Well, the first connection we made was when we analyzed the Book of Enoch, which is first known to have been written down around 250, 300 BC. It was found amongst the Dead Sea Scrolls. In fact, more of the Dead Sea Scrolls concern the Book of Enoch than anything else. But it refers to events that are infinitely older than that. That's just the earliest written account. And in this, it tells how this character called Enoch, who existed before the flood, was taken on a journey northwards. And from the descriptions given of the differences between daylight and darkness, he gave the time of year, we can tell where the latitude where the person is. And the description given seems to describe exactly New Grange as we see it now. We know he was describing something at the latitude of New Grange in Ireland. and he describes it remarkably well, where he is instructed in the sciences by someone called Uriel. Now, the person called Enoch didn't understand anything that was happening to them. They just wrote down the event, but we can reconstruct it. And in fact, another scholar has done the same similar reconstruction and come to the similar interpretation. But we can also see now how, because that might be a literal truth or it might be a post-rationalized truth written down, symbolizing a movement. But there was certainly a connection between the British Isles and Western France and the islands in the Mediterranean and the Phoenicians, the Canaanites, the Jews. There is a continuity and a connection, because there are megalithic sites, ancient stone structures across Western Europe. They also exist in Israel. They don't exist very many other places apart from islands in the Mediterranean. So there is a continuity in the written record and in the archaeological record. And we can see in ancient Jewish texts references that are totally aligned to the rising of Venus and the alignment found in these megalithic structures in the British Isles. So, coming from various directions, we can build this connection quite strongly.
Indeed, and it begins to suggest a very different world back in the distant past, not the world we're led to believe, where it was essentially isolated tribal units living very simple lives 5,000 years ago. On the contrary, you're looking at a very complex culture, and tell us a little bit about the culture that existed in the British Isles back in that time, because it was quite remarkable, and it seems to me, from what you're saying, that its influence reached north and drew material from the north and south into the Middle East, and drew, and in other words, it was a huge culture. Tell us a little bit about it. Well,
the standard explanation of history is sort of like Chinese whispers. People made early deductions, maybe hundreds of years ago, and then they've been built on and built on and built on. And we've got a view of the past which is probably not exactly right. And when you analyze all of the available information, you can come out with a rather different picture. And when we finished writing this book, we were cutting against the grain a little bit. But just recently there's been a discovery in Germany of an artifact which has proven beyond doubt to all of archaeology that the people in Northern Europe were hundreds of years ahead of the people in the Middle East when it came to astronomy, which is what we've been saying all along. That is now accepted, and that's only happened in recent months. And we don't know where these people came from. We're not saying that they were necessarily locals, but it appears that the British Isles and the western part of Europe was particularly good for astronomical observation, and they used all the waterways around the British Isles, being a relatively small place with lots of rivers and sea all around it. For traveling, traveling across land was very, very difficult. They hadn't invented the wheel, and the forests were everywhere, but boats could sail everywhere. And they were sailing huge chunks of masonry to wherever they needed them. Like Stonehenge was taken hundreds of miles before it was erected. So they were pretty smart, and they used, as we've pointed out, an international standard unit of measurement that's known as the megalithic yard, which is macroscopically accurate. It's a Swiss watchmakers to the degree of accuracy. So these people building these flintstone cavemen settlements and monuments were far from ignoramuses. They were building to a degree of accuracy that no modern architect would dream of.
Now, why were the Grooved-Ware people so obsessed with this accuracy?
Well, that's I've been continuing to research that, and I have another book coming out later this year, which thankfully will come out simultaneously in the US and the UK. It is because it's been worthy of investigation, because there's a great collision, there's a great paradox, because all of the artifacts that we can find associated with the Grooved-Ware people, and they call that because they put grooves into their pottery.
Right.
All the artifacts we can find are pretty basic, and yet their science and their measurement systems were extremely advanced. So it seems that this science and these measurements were not belonging to the people whose communities we're looking at. There must have been a higher, whether it's the priesthood or whatever, that a higher group, because there's just an inconsistency between the high science that we see. But we think these people were given instructions on how to make this measurement and how to use it, and told they must use it accurately and use it well, because it was a measurement from the gods. It's slightly smaller than a yard, but they were measuring it to an accuracy that you couldn't even see with the naked eye.
Now, this is fascinating, and we're going to find out more about the motive for this accuracy in just a minute. This is Whitley Strieber. It's Dreamland. We'll be right back. The veil between the worlds can fall. The undiscovered country can become your backyard. There is a much larger world behind your backs. It is this world to which man is blind. Man is soul blind and God blind. There is no supernatural. There is only the natural world, and you have access to all of it. Souls are part of nature. These are just a few of the things said to me at 3 o'clock in the morning of June the 6th, 1998, when I was awakened by the master of the key. Get the key. Bring it into your life today. The key, available only in this world from the unknowncountry.com store. Remember, subscribers get it for just $9.47, half the list price. Regular price, $14.95 discounted. The Book of Hiram, The Secrets of the Knights Templar Revealed, a remarkable achievement by Robert Lomas and Chris Knight. Extraordinary, and at an extraordinary price at the unknowncountry.com store, just $18.95. A price like that cannot last forever. So go to the unknowncountry.com store, get the Book of Hiram, a beautiful hardcover book listed at $27.50 for just $18.95. The Secrets of the Knights Templar. How can you go wrong? Check Amazon, see what their price is. You'll come back. The unknowncountry.com store. Hey, Strieber, it's Dreamland. We're back. We're talking with Christopher Knight, the Book of Hiram, Freemasonry, Venus, and the Secret Key to the Life of Jesus, his book written with Robert Lomas. Christopher and Robert have a website. There is more than one website actually involved, but I'm going to give you the one with you can get everywhere from here. It's knight-lomas.com. That's KNIGHT-Lomas.com. And we'll be talking a little bit more later about the Book of Hiram, and you'll find out just exactly what they have done. They have reconstructed in the Masonic Testament, rather, I misspoke myself, something that could be a missing book of the Bible. It's quite amazing stuff that they're doing. This is probably the most advanced research of this kind being done anywhere in the world by anybody right now. Two guys unconnected with this who just got curious about something and really knew how to dig and were determined and have gotten somewhere. Okay, now, so we're talking, and this, in my mind, gets me back to the splitting of the Druid knowledge and the Masonic knowledge back in 1717. I believe that was when it was. And
that's right.
Yeah. And I almost am tempted to think that some of the knowledge that the really ancient knowledge of this priesthood that you were talking about that demanded such extraordinary accuracy of measurement and was capable of achieving it, maybe is still as much hidden among the Druids as it is among the Masons. And I keep getting back to this because I'm thinking that maybe a direction that you guys should go in. Maybe you should become Druids now and see what you can find there.
Yeah, that would be a logical connection. But the vein that I'm researching currently is so rich that I've got to keep digging the way I'm going. But the problem with all this is once you open it up, it's so rich. I mean, it's been ignored for hundreds and perhaps thousands of years. So there's just so much to go at.
I won't belabor the Druid thing, but I do recall a fellow called Isaac Bonowitz who found he believed that he had discovered a living, still intact and completely unbroken line of Druids in I believe in Lithuania. So if you ever go in that direction, Lithuania might be a place to look to find some rich Druid lore that would be maybe completely untainted by the troubles that plagued this whole strain of material back in the early 18th century. Now let's go on, if we may. Let's talk a little bit about the Temple of Solomon, and because I want to get into the life of Christ and how it relates to this in such an extraordinary way. But I think we need to begin with the Temple of Solomon. What was it really, and what was its purpose?
Well, the Temple of Solomon obviously has become an icon in Freemasonry, and is obviously very important in Judaism and therefore Christianity. There is no evidence of archaeologically of anything of the age of King Solomon, 3,000 years, but it's fairly certain that that site, that location, has been a holy place for a great deal longer than that. And the name Jerusalem itself means foundation place for observing Venus. That's what the name means. And we believe that it was very specifically for the temple itself was aligned, just as Newgrange is, so that when Venus rises ahead of the sun, as it does, because Venus viewed from Earth appears very close to the sun most of the time, and very bright, rises in the east and shines its light straight into the specially designed light box, just like Newgrange in Ireland again, so that the light of Venus could shine into the Holy of Holies, which is the temple in the modern sense, because it's believed that's where God lived. God was actually in there. So the light of Venus would penetrate into the Holy of Holies itself. And we believe that the Dome on the Rock, which is now the Muslim building that was built in the 6th century on the site of what was believed to be Solomon's temple, does not actually mark the real site of the temple. It's a few hundred yards out, and you need to move further north to find the true alignment through the gateway that was aligned to the rising of Venus. And quite independently, a scholar working on King Solomon's temple and the modern temple in Jerusalem, Dr. Kaufman, has come to the same conclusion for entirely different reasons. He didn't know about our argument, and we only relatively recently became aware of his, that the Temple of Solomon, the Holy of Holies, is not under the Dome of the Rock at all. It's a small rock that protrudes out, that's ignored by everybody, a little further to the north inside the temple area.
Now, however, there is one place we could learn a lot more about the Temple of Solomon if they would but let us, and that takes us back to Scotland. And so let's journey back to Scotland and go to Roslin Chapel, so-called, and we're going to we have just a few seconds right now before our break, so I'm going to just begin by letting us know where Roslin Chapel is and when it was built, and then we'll get into it in a few minutes much more deeply.
Yeah, I mean, this is a curious medieval building about 10 miles south of Edinburgh in Scotland. It's a tiny little, well, it's considered to be a church or a chapel, but it's neither. We've taken enough scholars there who've all agreed that it is a very Jewish building. It was started in 1441.
Okay, we will be right back to talk more about this extremely important and mysterious structure. This is Whitley Strieber. It's Dreamland. We'll be right back. The Book of Hiram, The Secrets of the Knights Templar Revealed, a remarkable achievement by Robert Lomas and Chris Knight. Extraordinary, and at an extraordinary price at the unknowncountry.com store, just $18.95. A price like that cannot last forever. So go to the unknowncountry.com store, get the Book of Hiram, a beautiful hardcover book listed at $27.50 for just $18.95. The Secrets of the Knights Templar. How can you go wrong? Check Amazon, see what their price is. You'll come back. The unknowncountry.com store. This is Whitley Strieber. It's Dreamland. We're back. We're talking to Christopher Knight, the Book of Hiram. Freemasonry Venus and the Secret Key to the Life of Jesus. And you know where you can get this. You need to go to the unknowncountry.com store. Just click on the store tab and you'll see the book right there. It's a great, big, beautiful hardcover book, a lovely book, and very, very worth getting. I think they've even got it at a better price than Amazon, so don't miss. Help us. Use the unknowncountry.com store. It's fast, it's efficient, and it can get very personal because it's not a great, big, massive organization where if you do have a question, nobody really will help you. That's not true of us. We really will help you. Okay, now let's get back. And we were talking about Rosslyn Chapel, a tremendously important place for a lot of reasons, because if you go there, you're overwhelmed by all kinds of unexpected symbology. And I have to tell you, having been there myself, it isn't a chapel at all. It's a mysterious building. The people who are in control of it, I don't think, have any idea what they have. What it is.
They don't.
No, it's a very negative situation that it's in right now. I think it's in the hands of a bunch of ignoramuses, only because of the fact that when I was there and listened to what the guides had to say about it, I was almost ready to laugh in their faces. So, okay, that's neither here nor there.
They give out information they know is wrong, which is very strange, but I can't quite understand that, but that's their problem. But Rosslyn was built more than half a century before Columbus set sail for the New World. So, I mean, it's quite old. And it's a sort of collision between Jewish mythology and Norse mythology, the heritage of the Vikings and the Celts, all sort of melded together into this curious, heavily carved building that is full of symbolism, as you say, Whitley, yeah.
Now, tell us a little bit. You met a gentleman who actually traced his own ancestry back kind of in both directions.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about him. I'm not looking at this part of the book right now. His name isn't coming to me, but
that's Baron Sinclair Bunda.
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
Who's a Swedish aristocrat on his father's side and a descendant of William Sinclair, the guy that built Rosslyn over 5.5 centuries ago, on his mother's side. So from his father's side, his lineage goes back to Thor, which is quite impressive.
Yeah, that's impressive.
And on his mother's side, right back down the Jewish line to contemporaries of Jesus, at least. So he's a well-born guy, and he lives in the most splendid castle in Scotland, a little way away from Rosslyn. But he's got a very interesting family tree.
So, and tell us what you found from him.
Well, he was more interested in learning from us, in actual fact.
Really?
Because he'd got bits of the puzzle, and he was quite prepared to believe what we were saying about Rosslyn, that it was not a church. It was only turned into a church by Queen Victoria when they put stained glass windows in and built a baptistry in it, and nearly wrecked the building in doing so, because it was never intended to have those things in it. But we keep on making discoveries about this building. It really is the most amazing artifact, well worth a visit if anyone's in Scotland. It is quite remarkable. And the first Freemasons in Britain were the Sinclair family in Scotland. They were the Grand Master Masons of Freemasonry, descendants of William Sinclair's. And the descriptions of King Solomon's Temple that are in Freemasonry, in the rituals of Freemasonry, describe in detail the secret structures of Rosslyn and the secret chambers underneath, and the way that there is an underground passage connecting from Rosslyn to the castle, Rosslyn Castle, which is nearby. Every part of this description fits the description which in Freemasonry is said to be belonging to the temple in Jerusalem and King David's palace in the city of David, which is Jerusalem, of course. So it is a sort of carbon copy of the description of Jerusalem found in Masonic ritual.
Now tell us, who is it who is in control of the place now?
The Rosslyn is privately owned by cadet family member that branched off from the Sinclairs when the English took control. The original owners were sort of sidelined, and the person who now is the owner is a senior police officer who lives near London and apparently doesn't go to Roslin very often. He's the Lord of Roslin, and but an operative police officer. And I believe he doesn't want a lot of contact with Roslin. He doesn't like a lot of contact, other people having contact with it. Although he has developed it a lot for tourists and taken grants to develop it and so forth. I would be dishonest if I didn't say I would prefer it to be held in public hands rather than in private hands.
Oh, it certainly belongs in public hands. It's not only a national treasure, but an international treasure of the very highest order. And it seems to be in the hands of somebody who would rather its secrets remain secret. I don't know. I'm from Texas, and in reading your book, it seems we call people like that cussed. I won't put words in your mouth.
I won't disagree with you.
But I certainly had a very, very negative impression of this gentleman. Anyone who impedes the progress of human knowledge, especially the potential... tell us a little bit about what might be hidden beneath Roslin Chapel.
Well, there are many reasons to believe that the documents and treasures that were buried beneath King Solomon's temple, or the Jerusalem temple, I should say, because it was Herod's temple at that time, just before 70 AD. In 70 AD, the Jews went to war against the Romans, and the Romans destroyed them over a number of years, finally destroying Jerusalem and razing the temple. But before they did that, they hid their most important documents and treasures underneath the temple. And that's recorded in the Copper Scroll, which was found amongst the Dead Sea Scrolls in the cave on the banks of the Dead Sea in 1947. And this Copper Scroll, which was opened after these thousands of years, explains that these important documents were put there. The really important ones were placed under the Jerusalem temple. And we believe that there is splendid evidence showing that they were removed between 1118 and 1128 by the founder members, the 9 members of the Knights Templar.
Yes.
And were taken to Scotland in 1140 to lands owned by the Sinclair family, and were subsequently reburied in a carbon copy, below ground, that is, a carbon copy, of the Jerusalem temple, which is Roslin. So the most important documents from the time of Christ that tell the story of what was happening and what these passionate Jewish people believed was happening and their coming of their Messiah are beneath Roslin.
Now this really does open this thing up, because the amazing thing is that you have, I believe, gone far toward reconstructing what might be in those documents.
Yes, because we can't get to them themselves. We've had to sort of reconstruct the mindset of the people that put them there and the values and beliefs that they held.
And we're going to find out all about that in just a moment. It's Whitley Strieber. We'll be right back. UnknownCountry.com offers so much that's free. This program is always free. We have free daily news of the Edge, unlike anything you'll ever see anywhere, plus a wonderful free newsletter. All you have to do to sign up is to give us your email address right on the site, and we will never give that email address to anybody else. All it will do is get you the newsletter. It will not get you 1 ounce of spam, believe you me. So sign up today, the UnknownCountry.com newsletter. The Book of Hiram, The Secrets of the Knights Templar Revealed, a remarkable achievement by Robert Lomas and Chris Knight. Extraordinary, and at an extraordinary price at the UnknownCountry.com store, just $18.95. A price like that cannot last forever. So go to the unknowncountry.com store. Get the Book of Hiram, a beautiful hardcover book listed at $27.50 for just $18.95. The Secrets of the Knights Templar. How can you go wrong? Check Amazon, see what their price is. You'll come back. The unknowncountry.com store. This is Whitley Strieber. It's Dreamland. If you value knowledge of the past and an understanding of who we really are and where we came from, what we are about, even who created us, then you need a book like the Book of Hiram, brilliantly and carefully researched. This book will help you to become more enlightened. Freemasonry, Venus, and the Secret Key to the Life of Jesus. Get it from the unknowncountry.com store. Christopher Knight, as we left, I guess I gave you a huge kind of a question. You tell us something about what you have found in reconstructing the documents that may be hidden beneath Rosslyn Chapel.
There is, we find a direct connection between the beliefs that appear to have been held by the people who built the megalithic structures in the British Isles, and these were held by the Canaanite people. Those were the original inhabitants of Israel, who were, the Bible tells us, sort of driven out as Moses and his people came north from Egypt. But in actual fact, it's fairly sure that Moses and his people were themselves Canaanites. They were just a sort of peasants, lower order, who had a bit of a rebellion against the landowners that were, and the Phoenicians, who were very rich. But their fascination with Venus and the astronomy associated with Venus passed down the line. And at the time of Christ, there were two forms of Judaism that were particularly important, that which was based on Moses and that which was based on Enoch. Now, the Enochian Judaism has sort of disappeared. In early Christianity, the very earliest Christians, the Book of Enoch was hugely important. But as the Romans turned Jewish Christianity, if you like, into a sort of religion that was suitable for the somewhat mythical tastes of the Romans, and developed what is now, we would now recognize more as Christianity, it was rather different. And certainly what we might view as astrology was very, very important to these people. Now, that would sound terrible to a lot of Christians, I'm sure, but it doesn't have to be viewed that way.
But should it? Because if you look at the Bible, you see the Old Testament.
It's very clear, the Bible.
Yeah. Well, if you just look at the animals of the Bible was written in the age of Aries, and the ram is most often mentioned in the Old Testament. Then the age of Pisces came along, and indeed, in the New Testament, Jesus is referred to as the fisher of man, and the fish is the earliest symbol of Christ. So certainly it was connected to astrology. It was profoundly connected to astrology.
There is a lot of evidence that has just been ignored because people didn't want to look for it. But it is quite clear that there are time spans that are referred to throughout the Old Testament and indeed the New Testament that are based on the movements of Venus, which is a 40-year cycle. It perfectly 40 years, to an accuracy of seconds. They used to set clocks by it until very recently. And that 40-year cycle can be found everywhere. And 480 years, which is 12 times 40, and then 3 times that, which is 1,440 years. These periods were absolutely essential. The Jews believed between the flood and the founding of the temple was 1,440 years. Between Moses crossing the Red Sea and the birth of Jesus was 1,440 years. These patterns had to be there. And interestingly, between Jesus and the building of Rosslyn was 1,440 years. So the builders of Rosslyn knew about this as well. And these patterns come all the time. Now, the 40 years, everyone knows is in the Bible. The original kings seem to have served 40 years. Saul was king for 40 years. David for 40 years. Solomon for 40 years. Many of the kings were 40 years. Plus there were 40 years in the wilderness. 40 years, and 40 days, 40 nights. 40 is so important, and it's all the movements of Venus. Even the 40 days and 40 nights is the cusp movement at the end of 40 years. And we can be fairly certain that Jesus was born on Christmas Day, believe it or not, the 25th of December, 7 BC, because of calendar mistakes. It's now known when Herod was actually on the throne in 7 BC. And he actually died when he was just over 40 because he waited till his 40th birthday to lead the war against the Romans. And of course he was arrested and crucified. But he had to wait that 40 years because that is the prophecy. And his birth, the star of Bethlehem, people look at it and say, I wonder what it is. And they look to see what it might be, a shooting star, it might be this, it might be another. They should read the Dead Sea Scrolls. They should read the Bible carefully. It was absolutely required that the Messiah be born under a star. The star prophecy says that will be the sign of him coming, which can only happen every 480 years. And the Dead Sea Scrolls actually say that prediction has just happened. They say a star has marched forth from Jacob, a scepter has arisen in Israel, and he will shatter the temples of Moab and destroy the sons of Seth. He was going to destroy the Romans. That's what it meant. And they used the same words of the original prophecy. So the person who was going to be the Messiah had to be born on that day. Now, whether Jesus was or wasn't, we don't know, but he must have claimed to have been. Otherwise, his claim to be Messiah would not have been taken seriously. And Messiah, to them, meant King of the Jews. It didn't mean anything else. There's nothing necessarily otherworldly about it. So we can start to understand the life of Jesus as well by looking at this material.
Tell us a little bit about Shekinah.
The Shekinah is what appears every 480 years. The Shekinah was divine to the Jews. It was the light that shone into the temple, and it would shine for a number of years on certain dates, and then it would go away. It would go away for 480 years. And they thought that that's because they had done something bad, but they knew when it would come back. But what it actually was Venus in conjunction with Mercury at the birth of Christ. So both nearly close to 100% magnitude. So
you know, don't you, that the recent American attack on Iraq was codenamed Shock and Awe.
Oh, right, yes.
And for a reason, and you just stated it. Quite interesting. This is Whitley Strieber's Dreamland on the IBC Radio Network. We'll be right back. For those of you listening on the internet, let's listen to a little bit of Sarah Beth Heeran's wonderful, wonderful music available from the UnknownCountry.com store exclusively. This is Whitley Strieber. It's Dreamland. We're back with Chris Knight. And I don't think it can be truly said that this secret knowledge is entirely lost. There are people within the structure of, for example, the Pentagon, who know it and who chose their code word, in this case, very carefully. But let's go on.
That's very interesting. Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? There's a lot in this world that is hidden beneath the surfaces, and particularly beneath the surface of words. And for those of you who are interested in that, in the meaning, the hidden meaning of words, listen to the subscriber interview. Jordan Maxwell today is available. It's just fascinating stuff, and it's not exactly about what we're talking about now, but it certainly resonates with it. Now, okay, we're coming, if you can believe it, to the end of our time together. I'm so disappointed.
Oh, yeah.
I could interview you, Christopher, for hours and hours, but we have run out of time, and it crept up on me, and I'm very sorry. The Book of Hiram, Freemasonry, Venus, and the Secret Key to the Life of Jesus. You want to know something real about who we are and where we came from. Get the Book of Hiram, Christopher Knight and Robert Lomas.